The train whistle shrieked across the Montana plains as Natalie Zimmerman pressed one trembling hand to her swollen belly and clutched her carpetbag with the other, wondering if the man waiting at the platform would turn her away the moment he saw her condition. She had written to Thomas Porter 3 months ago, responding to his advertisement for a bride, but that was before she knew about the baby. Before she understood that the traveling salesman who had promised her marriage in Boston had disappeared with her savings and left her with more than just a broken heart. The shame had driven her from Massachusetts, and when Thomas's letter arrived with a train ticket and kind words about starting fresh in Montana territory, she had seen it as divine providence. She had tried to write him the truth twice, but each time the pen had frozen in her hand. What if he withdrew his offer? What if she ended up alone in a strange city with no money and a baby on the way now? As the train hissed to a stop at the small platform in Opal, Montana, in the blazing summer of 1878, Natalie knew she had run out of time for honesty. The truth was about to reveal itself whether she was ready or not. She stepped carefully down the metal stairs, her green traveling dress doing little to conceal her 5-month belly. The fabric strained across her middle, despite her best efforts with strategic placement of her shawl. The platform was nearly empty in the late afternoon heat. Just a few ranch hands loading supplies and an older woman with 2 children waiting for someone. And there, standing alone near a hitching post, was a tall man in dusty work clothes and a worn hat, scanning each passenger with increasing concern. Their eyes met across 30 feet of weathered planks, and Natalie watched his expression shift from hopeful anticipation to confusion to what might have been shock. Thomas Porter was younger than she had imagined from his letters, perhaps 26 or 27, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. His face was honest and open, the kind that probably had never learned to hide what he was thinking. Right now, he was thinking he had been deceived. Natalie forced her feet to move forward even though every instinct screamed at her to climb back onto that train. She stopped a few feet away from him, close enough to see the golden flecks in his brown eyes and the way his jaw had gone tight. "Mr. Porter," her voice came out smaller than she intended. "I am Natalie Zimmerman." Thomas removed his hat slowly, turning it in his hands. His gaze dropped to her belly, then back to her face. She waited for the anger, the accusations, the cold dismissal. Her hand instinctively moved to protect her stomach. "Miss Zimmerman." His voice was deeper than she expected, with a rough quality that suggested he spent more time talking to horses than people. "Your letters didn't mention you were expecting." "I know." Natalie felt tears threatening and blinked them back furiously. She had cried enough over the past months. "I should have told you. I tried to write it down a dozen times, but I was afraid. I had nowhere else to go, and I thought perhaps if you met me first, if you knew I was a hard worker and honest in every other way, you might understand that I need this chance. I need somewhere safe for my child." "The father?" Thomas asked, and there was something careful in his tone, as if he was trying not to jump to conclusions. "Gone. He lied about everything, took my money, and left me ruined." The words tasted bitter. "I know I have no right to ask anything of you after deceiving you about this. If you want to send me back, I will understand. I have just enough money for a room tonight while I figure out what to do next." She was lying about that last part. She had exactly 47 cents left after the journey, but she would not beg, even if she was desperate. Thomas was quiet for a long moment, studying her face with an intensity that made her want to look away. Finally, he said, "How far along are you?" 5 months, I think. The baby should come in December." He nodded slowly, then did something that surprised her completely. He reached out and gently took her carpetbag from her hand. "My wagon is just over here. It is about an hour ride to my ranch." Natalie stared at him. "You still want me to come? You came all this way. Least I can do is offer you supper and let you rest before we figure things out." He started walking toward a sturdy wagon hitched to 2 horses, then paused and looked back at her. "But Miss Zimmerman, no more lies between us. Whatever we decide, it needs to be built on honesty, understood?" "Yes." Relief flooded through her so intensely she felt dizzy. "Yes, I promise." "Thank you, Mr. Porter." "Thomas," he said, loading her bag into the wagon bed. "If we are considering marriage, you should call me Thomas." He helped her up onto the wagon seat with surprising gentleness, his hand steady at her elbow. As he walked around to climb up beside her, Natalie caught herself studying him. He moved with the easy confidence of a man comfortable with physical labor, and there was something solid and dependable about him that made her want to trust him, despite everything she had learned about trusting men. They rode in silence for the first few minutes, the wagon creaking along the dusty road that cut through endless grassland dotted with pine trees and distant mountains. The Montana sky stretched overhead in shades of blue Natalie had never seen in Boston, where buildings crowded out the horizon. "Tell me about the ranch," Natalie said finally, unable to bear the quiet any longer. Thomas seemed to relax slightly at the neutral topic. "It is not much yet. About 200 acres, though most of it is leased land from the territorial government. I run cattle, about 100 head right now, hoping to increase that next year. Got a small house, barn, and some outbuildings. I built most of it myself over the past 3 years. You have ranch hands. Just one, an older fellow named Samuel who helps during branding and roundup. Otherwise, it is just me. That is part of why I put in that advertisement. The work is hard and the isolation gets to a man after a while. Figured a wife would make the place feel more like a home." Natalie heard what he did not say. He had been lonely. "Your letters mentioned you came from Kansas." "My family had a farm there. When both my parents died of fever 5 years back, my brother got the land as the eldest. He offered me a corner to work, but I wanted something of my own. Heard Montana was opening up for ranching, so I came north with everything I could pack and enough savings to make a start." He glanced at her. "What about you? You said Boston." "Yes. I worked as a seamstress after my mother passed. My father died when I was young. I thought I was making a decent life for myself until I met Charles Whitmore." She said the name with all the venom she felt. "He claimed to be a merchant, said he was establishing a new store and needed a wife who could manage the business side. He courted me for 2 months, just long enough to get my trust and my savings. Then he vanished." "You did not know about the baby when he left?" "No. I found out a few weeks later. By then, my landlady had heard rumors about my situation and asked me to leave. She ran a respectable house," she said, "and could not have an unwed mother lowering the tone. I tried to keep working, but once the other seamstresses discovered my condition, they made it impossible. I was stealing from charity boxes just to eat when your letter arrived." Natalie had not intended to reveal quite so much, but something about the steady way Thomas listened made the words spill out. She waited for judgment or pity, but he just nodded. That must have been frightening, facing all that alone. It was. It still is. She placed a hand on her belly where the baby had started to move in recent weeks, little flutters that amazed and terrified her in equal measure. "I keep wondering how I will manage everything. I know nothing about being a mother. I barely remember my own." "Seems to me most people figure it out as they go," Thomas said. "I have helped birth plenty of calves and foals. Cannot be that different." Natalie could not help it. She laughed, the sound startling in the open air. "I truly hope there are some differences." A smile tugged at the corner of Thomas's mouth, the first she had seen from him. It transformed his serious face into something warmer. Fair point. Though the basic principle holds. You do your best, you stay patient, and you love the life you are responsible for. Rest tends to work itself out. They fell into a more comfortable silence after that. Natalie studied the landscape, so different from anything she had known. The vastness of it was overwhelming. She could see for miles in every direction, nothing but rolling grassland and distant mountains. A person could disappear out here, she thought. Or maybe a person could finally find herself. The sun was lowering toward the mountains when Thomas turned the wagon off the main road onto a narrower track. Almost there. The ranch is just over this rise. As they crested the hill, Natalie got her first look at what might become her new home. The house was small but well built, constructed of logs with a stone chimney at one end. A covered porch stretched across the front, and someone had planted wildflowers along the side that were blooming in cheerful yellows and purples. Behind the house stood a barn and several smaller structures. A creek glittered in the distance, lined with cottonwood trees. It was rustic and isolated, but there was something appealing about it, something peaceful. "It is lovely," Natalie said honestly. Thomas looked pleased. "Glad you think so. I know it is not fancy like what you are probably used to in Boston. Boston had more buildings and noise. This has more sky and quiet. I think I prefer this." He helped her down from the wagon, and Natalie felt the soreness in her back from the long journey. She must have winced because Thomas said, "Come inside and rest. I will bring your bag in and see about supper." The inside of the house was as simple as the outside, but it was clean and organized. One large room served as kitchen, dining area, and sitting area, with a stone fireplace dominating one wall. 2 doors led off the main room to what she assumed were bedrooms. The furniture was handmade but solid, and there were small touches that surprised her. Books on a shelf, a colorful rug on the floor, curtains at the windows, worn but carefully mended. "There are 2 bedrooms," Thomas said, setting her bag down. "You can have the larger one. I will take the smaller. There is water in the pitcher if you want to wash up, and the necessary is out back behind the house." Natalie turned to face him. "Thomas, we need to talk about what happens next. You have been incredibly kind, but you did not sign up for a pregnant bride. I will not hold you to any obligation." He removed his hat and ran a hand through his hair, making it stand up in messy waves. "I have been thinking about that the whole ride here. Can I be honest with you, please? When I first saw you on that platform, I felt angry. Felt like I had been made a fool of. But then you explained, and I started thinking about what it took for you to get on that train knowing you would have to face me. That took courage." He met her eyes directly. "I put that advertisement in the paper because I want a family. Want someone to build this place with, someone to come home to at the end of a hard day. Want kids someday. You are already carrying a child who needs a father. Maybe that is Providence too." Natalie's throat tightened. "You would claim another man's child." "I would claim your child if you became my wife. The baby did not do anything wrong. Deserves a good home and a father just like any other." Thomas stepped closer, his expression earnest. "I am not saying we have to rush into marriage tomorrow. Maybe we could court properly for a while, let you get settled, see if we suit each other. But I am saying I am willing to try if you are." "Why?" Natalie whispered. "You could send for another bride, one who comes without complications." "Maybe, but you are the one who is here. The one who needed help and was brave enough to ask for it, even badly. That means something to me." He shifted his weight, suddenly looking uncertain. "Unless you do not want this. If you would rather I help you get set up somewhere else, find you work in town maybe, I will do that instead. I do not want you to feel trapped." Natalie thought about her options. She could try to make it on her own in Opal, but she had no skills that would earn enough to support herself and a baby. She could attempt to return to Boston, but there was nothing waiting for her there except more shame and poverty. Or she could stay here with this serious, kind man who was offering her not just charity but a genuine chance at a real life. "I would like to stay," she said. "I would like to try courting and see if we suit each other. But Thomas, I need you to understand what you are taking on. I have been sick most mornings. I am tired all the time. My emotions are unpredictable. I cry at strange things and get angry at nothing. The doctor in Boston said I should expect more of that as the pregnancy progresses. And after the baby comes, there will be sleepless nights and constant needs. You need to be certain you want this." "I am certain I want to try," Thomas said. "That is the best either of us can offer right now." "We try." Natalie felt something loosen in her chest, a tightness she had been carrying for months. "Then yes, I would like to try too." Thomas smiled again, and Natalie found herself thinking that she could get used to that smile. "Good. Now let me cook you some supper before you fall over from exhaustion. You look dead on your feet." "I feel dead on my feet," Natalie admitted, "but I should help with the cooking. If I am going to be here, I should earn my keep. Tonight you rest. Tomorrow, you can start bossing me around my own kitchen." He was true to his word, insisting she sit in one of the wooden chairs by the table while he prepared a simple meal of salt pork, beans, and fresh bread that he admitted he had bought from a neighbor rather than baking himself. As Natalie watched him move around the kitchen with easy competence, she felt something she had not experienced in a long time: hope. After supper, Thomas showed her to the larger bedroom. It contained a double bed with a simple quilt, a dresser, and a washstand. Through the window, she could see the sun setting behind the mountains in a blaze of orange and pink. "If you need anything during the night, just call out." "I am a light sleeper," Thomas said from the doorway. "I usually get up before dawn to see to the animals, but you sleep as long as you need." Growing a baby is hard work. "Thank you, Thomas, for everything. I know I keep saying it, but I mean it." "I know you do. Sleep well, Natalie." He closed the door gently behind him, and Natalie sank onto the bed, hardly able to believe the turn her life had taken. This morning she had been terrified, convinced she was about to be stranded in a strange place. Tonight, she had a roof over her head, food in her stomach, and a man who seemed genuinely willing to give her a chance. She changed into her nightgown and slipped under the quilt, feeling the baby move inside her. "We are going to be all right," she whispered to her unborn child. "I think we might actually be all right." Morning came with the sound of roosters and the smell of coffee. Natalie woke feeling more rested than she had in weeks, the bed comfortable and the quiet of the ranch soothing after months of city noise. She dressed quickly in one of her simpler dresses and ventured out into the main room. Thomas was already gone, probably out tending to his animals as he had mentioned. He had left the coffee pot warming on the stove and a note on the table written in careful block letters: "Help yourself to breakfast. Back in an hour or so. Thomas." Natalie smiled at the note and set about exploring the kitchen, taking stock of supplies. He had the basics: flour, sugar, salt, dried beans, some cured meat. A crock of sourdough starter sat on a shelf, suggesting he did make his own bread sometimes despite his comment about buying it. The larder was modest but adequate. She was mixing batter for pancakes when Thomas returned, bringing with him the smell of fresh air and animals. He stopped in the doorway, surprise crossing his face. "You did not have to cook." "I wanted to. Besides, I need to prove I have some useful skills to offer. The fact that you can make pancakes already puts you ahead of me. Mine always turn out like leather." They ate breakfast together, and Natalie noticed that Thomas seemed more relaxed than he had yesterday. The initial shock had worn off, perhaps, or maybe he was simply more comfortable in his own space. He asked about her journey from Boston, and she told him about the long train ride, the changing landscapes, the mix of passengers she had encountered. "What do you need from town?" Thomas asked as he finished his coffee. "I am planning to ride in tomorrow for supplies. If you need fabric or personal items or anything else, I can pick them up." Natalie hesitated. She had no money for extras, but she also needed to be practical. "I will need fabric to make some clothes for the baby, and my dresses will not fit much longer. I can make new ones if I have material. Make me a list. And Natalie, you do not have to worry about the money. If we are going to make this work, what is mine is yours. I do not want to be a burden." "You are not a burden. You are going to be my wife, hopefully. That means we share responsibilities. You are already planning to cook and keep house and help with everything here. That is worth more than a few yards of fabric." After breakfast, Thomas took Natalie on a tour of the ranch. He showed her the barn where he kept 2 horses, a milk cow, and some chickens. He explained his plans for expanding the herd, for building better irrigation from the creek, for eventually adding sheep to diversify. His face lit up when he talked about the land, and Natalie could see how much the ranch meant to him. This was not just property to Thomas. It was his dream, built with his own hands and determination. "The nearest neighbor is about 2 miles south," Thomas said as they walked along the creek. "Family named the Garveys. They have been here longer than I have, helped me get started when I first arrived. They have 3 daughters and a son. Good people. They will probably want to meet you soon." "Are there many families around here? More than there used to be?" Opal was just a trading post 10 years ago. Now it has a general store, a church, a school, even a doctor. The railroad helped, made it easier for people to settle out here. Natalie bent to pick one of the wildflowers growing along the creek bank. "Do you go to church in town?" "When I can." "Reverend Matthews holds services every Sunday. He is a decent man, does not judge people too harshly." Thomas paused, then added carefully, "People in town will have questions about us, about the baby. Small town folks like to talk. I figure we tell them we met through letters, got married quickly, and the baby is mine. No one needs to know different. You would lie for me. I would protect my family. That is what I am offering here, Natalie. A real family, a real marriage if you will have it. Your past is your past. What matters is what we build going forward." Natalie felt tears sting her eyes. She seemed to cry at everything lately, but these were good tears. "How are you so kind? How is this real?" Thomas reached out and gently brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. The gesture was so tender it made her breath catch. "My parents were good people. They taught me that when you have the ability to help someone, you do it. That is all I am doing. Helping someone who needs it and maybe getting a partner out of the deal. Seems like it benefits both of us." They stood there by the creek, the sound of water moving over stones filling the silence, and Natalie felt something shift in her chest. She was attracted to Thomas, she realized. Not just grateful, but genuinely drawn to him. His quiet strength, his honesty, the gentleness in his rough hands. It was too soon to call it love, but it felt like the beginning of something that could become love given time. The days settled into a rhythm over the next few weeks. Natalie took over the cooking and housekeeping, and though she tired easily with the pregnancy, she found satisfaction in making the little house more comfortable. She sewed curtains for the bedroom windows, organized the kitchen more efficiently, and started a small herb garden near the porch. Thomas continued his ranch work, but he made a point of eating meals with her and spending the evenings together, talking or reading aloud from his small collection of books. True to his word, Thomas had brought home fabric from town along with yarn and needles for knitting. Natalie began making clothes for the baby, tiny gowns and blankets that seemed impossibly small. Sometimes she would catch Thomas watching her work, a soft expression on his face that made her wonder what he was thinking. One evening, about 3 weeks after her arrival, they sat on the porch watching the sunset. The air was finally cooling after a hot day, and Natalie had her knitting in her lap. Thomas was repairing a piece of tack, his hands moving with practiced ease. "The Garveys invited us for supper on Sunday after church," Thomas said. "I told them we would come if you are feeling up to it. I would like that. It will be nice to meet the neighbors. Fair warning, Molly Garvey is going to ask you 1,000 questions. She means well, but she is incurably curious." Natalie smiled. "I think I can handle that. What should I bring? It is rude to show up empty-handed. Maybe that apple pie you made yesterday. If it is as good as the first one, they will be impressed. You ate half of the first one in one sitting." "I am not sure your judgment is reliable." Thomas grinned. "It was a good pie." They lapsed into comfortable silence, and Natalie realized how natural this felt. She had expected awkwardness, constant awareness of the unusual circumstances that brought them together. Instead, they had fallen into an easy companionship that surprised her. Thomas was not a man of many words, but when he spoke, it was always honest and often thoughtful. He was patient with her mood swings, understanding when she needed to rest, appreciative of her efforts around the house. And he was respectful of her space, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. But Natalie was beginning to want more. She wanted to know what it would be like to kiss him, to feel his arms around her properly instead of just the brief, polite touches they exchanged. She wanted to ask if he thought about her the way she was starting to think about him, in quiet moments when she should be focused on other things. "Thomas," she said, setting down her knitting, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why have you never married before? You are a good man with your own land. Surely women have been interested." He was quiet for a moment, focusing on the leather in his hands. "There was someone back in Kansas. Sarah Mitchell. We had an understanding we're planning to marry. Then my parents died, and my brother made it clear there was not room for me and a wife on the farm. I told Sarah I was going to Montana, asked her to come with me. She said no. She wanted the security of staying where she knew people, where her family was. Could not blame her for that. Montana was a risk, so we went our separate ways. You still think about her, sometimes. Mostly I wonder if she is happy. I heard she married a shopkeeper in town about a year after I left." He looked up at Natalie. "But I do not regret coming here. And I do not regret answering that letter from a seamstress in Boston." Natalie felt warmth spread through her. "I do not regret answering your advertisement either, even though I was terrified when I stepped off that train. I could tell. You looked like you were about to faint or run." "I was considering both." Thomas set aside his work and turned to face her more fully. "Natalie, I want you to know something. I am not rushing you into anything. We can take as much time as you need to feel comfortable to be sure this is what you want. But I also want you to know that I am already sure. These past weeks having you here, they have been good. Better than good. I look forward to coming back to the house now because I know you will be here. I like hearing you hum while you cook. I like the way you are with the animals when you think I am not watching. I like who I am when I am around you." Natalie's heart was racing. "Thomas, I feel the same way. I was not expecting to so soon, but I do." He reached over and took her hand, his calloused fingers wrapping around hers. "Then maybe we do not have to wait too long. We could get married next month before the weather turns cold. Give the baby my name before it is born. Are you sure? We have only known each other a few weeks. I am sure. But only if you are." Natalie thought about it, really considered what he was offering. A real marriage, not just an arrangement of convenience. A partnership. A family. security for her child, and maybe, eventually, love between them. She already cared for Thomas deeply. Was it so hard to imagine that care growing into love? And even more, she was beginning to suspect it already was love, just new and fragile and needing time to strengthen. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I am sure too. Let us get married next month." Thomas smiled, that transforming expression that made him handsome instead of just weathered. He lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles gently. "You have made me very happy, Natalie. You have saved my life, Thomas, and you are giving my baby a chance at a good life. I am the grateful one." "No more talk of gratitude. We are partners now, equals. We both bring something to this marriage." He stood and pulled her gently to her feet. For a moment they stood close together on the porch, the evening air warm around them. Then Thomas cupped her face with one hand and leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She did not want to. She rose on her toes to meet him, and when their lips touched, it was gentle and sweet and full of promise. The kiss did not last long, but when they pulled apart, Natalie felt like something important had just been sealed between them. "We should probably go inside," Thomas said softly. "Getting late, and you need your rest." They went in together, and that night, Natalie lay in bed with her hand on her belly, feeling the baby move, and thought about how strange life was. A few months ago, she had been certain her life was ruined. Now she was engaged to a good man, about to become a wife and mother, living in a beautiful place where the sky went on forever. It was not the life she had imagined, but it was becoming a life she wanted. Sunday came with clear skies and pleasant weather. Natalie wore her best dress, which she had carefully let out to accommodate her growing belly, and Thomas put on clean clothes and combed his hair with water. They rode to town in the wagon, arriving just as the church bell was ringing. The church was a simple white building with a cross on the steeple. Inside, wooden pews were filling with families and individuals dressed in their Sunday clothes. Heads turned as Thomas led Natalie to a pew near the middle, and she felt the weight of curious stares. She kept her head high and her hand resting lightly on Thomas's arm. Reverend Matthews was indeed a decent man, as Thomas had said. His sermon was about compassion and welcoming strangers, and Natalie could not help but wonder if Thomas had spoken to him beforehand. After the service, several people approached them, and Thomas introduced Natalie as his betrothed. Most were polite, offering congratulations, though Natalie could see the calculations happening as people noted her pregnant belly. The Garveys were a warm, boisterous family. Robert Garvey was a big man with a hearty laugh, and his wife Molly was plump and cheerful with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Their children ranged in age from 8 to 19, and the eldest daughter, Emma, was clearly fascinated by the romance of a mail-order bride. "How exciting to travel all that way to marry someone you had never met," Emma said as they walked to the Garvey wagon for the ride to their ranch. "Were you terrified?" "Yes," Natalie admitted with a laugh. "Absolutely terrified. But Thomas is wonderful, so it all worked out. He helped my father birth a calf last spring when our hired man was sick. He was so patient and gentle." Natalie glanced at Thomas, who had gone slightly pink around the ears. "He does seem to be good with animals. And he will be good with a baby too," Molly Garvey said, patting Natalie's arm. "You can tell a lot about a man by how he treats creatures that depend on him." Thomas has always been kind. Dinner at the Garveys was a lively affair, the table crowded with people and food. Natalie's pie was a hit, and she found herself relaxing in the warm chaos of a big family. It reminded her that she was not just marrying Thomas. She was joining a community, becoming part of something larger than herself. As the women cleaned up after dinner, Molly cornered Natalie in the kitchen. "I am glad Thomas found you." He has been lonely out there on that ranch, though he would never admit it. And every child deserves a father. Thomas will be a good one." Natalie felt the familiar sting of grateful tears. "Thank you. People have been kinder than I expected. We have all needed help at one time or another out here. Anyone who judges you for needing a fresh start is a fool. You just focus on your baby and on building a good marriage with Thomas. The rest will sort itself out." On the ride home, Thomas was quiet but content. Natalie found herself studying his profile in the late afternoon light, thinking about how much her feelings had grown in such a short time. It was not just gratitude anymore. She genuinely cared about him, worried about his long days of hard work, felt a flutter of pleasure when he smiled at something she said. She wanted to make him happy not because she owed him, but because his happiness mattered to her. "What are you thinking about?" Thomas asked, catching her staring. "You, us. How strange it is that a few weeks ago we were strangers and now we are planning a life together." "Good strange or bad strange? Good strange. Very good strange." He reached over and took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. They rode the rest of the way home like that, connected by clasped hands and growing affection, while the Montana sky blazed orange and purple overhead. The next few weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Natalie sewed herself a new dress for the wedding, simple white cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs. Thomas ordered rings from a catalog, simple gold bands that arrived just 2 days before the planned ceremony. They decided on a small wedding at the church with just a few friends and neighbors as witnesses. The morning of the wedding, Natalie woke with butterflies in her stomach that had nothing to do with the baby. She was really doing this, really marrying a man she had known for less than 2 months. But when she thought about Thomas, about his quiet strength and honest heart, about the way he looked at her like she was precious, the butterflies settled. This was right. This was where she was meant to be. Molly Garvey arrived early to help Natalie get ready, bringing flowers from her garden for a simple bouquet. "You look beautiful," Molly said, arranging Natalie's dark hair into a soft style. "Thomas is a lucky man." "I am the lucky one," Natalie said, and she meant it. The ceremony was brief but meaningful. Reverend Matthews spoke about marriage as a partnership, about the importance of honesty and respect, and working together through hardship. Thomas's voice was steady as he spoke his vows, and his eyes never left Natalie's face. When it was her turn, Natalie felt her voice catch with emotion, but she got through the words, promising to love and honor and cherish this good man who had chosen her despite everything. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Matthews said with a warm smile. "Thomas, you may kiss your bride." Thomas leaned in and kissed her softly, sweetly, and Natalie felt a surge of joy so intense it almost frightened her. When they pulled apart, she whispered, "Hello, husband." "Hello, wife," he whispered back, and his smile was radiant. The small group of guests congratulated them, and Molly had arranged for a simple reception at the Garvey Ranch with cake and refreshments. It was not a grand celebration, but it was warm and genuine, filled with good wishes and laughter. As Natalie stood beside Thomas, his arm around her waist, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. All the pain and fear and shame that had driven her from Boston. And now this, a new name, a new home, a new life, a new chance. When they returned to the ranch that evening, Thomas helped her down from the wagon with careful attention. They had not discussed what would happen tonight, and Natalie felt suddenly nervous. She was 6 months pregnant now, her belly round and prominent. She had no idea what Thomas expected or wanted from their wedding night. Inside, Thomas lit the lamps and turned to face her. "Natalie, I want you to know there is no pressure tonight. We can just sleep, same as we have been. I can stay in the small room if you prefer." I do not want you to stay in the small room, Natalie said quietly. We are married now. We should share a bed. Are you sure? I do not want you to feel obligated. She stepped closer to him, placing her hand on his chest where she could feel his heart beating fast. Thomas, I want to be your wife in every way. I know I am not exactly the most attractive right now with this belly, but I care about you. I want to be close to you. His hands came up to cup her face gently. You are beautiful. You have been beautiful since the moment I saw you on that platform, even when I was confused and worried. And you are more beautiful now. Do not ever think otherwise. He kissed her then, deeper than the chaste kiss at the church, and Natalie felt heat bloom through her body. She had been so worried about survival, about the baby, that she had not let herself think about desire. But she desired Thomas, wanted his hands on her skin, wanted to know him fully. They moved together to the bedroom, and Thomas was so gentle, so careful with her body and the baby she carried. He kissed every inch of skin he revealed, murmured words of affection and wonder, made her feel cherished in a way she had never experienced. When they finally came together, it was sweet and tender and right. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the bed, Thomas's hand resting protectively over her belly. The baby kicked, and Thomas laughed with delight. Did you feel that? He asked. Of course. I feel every move. That is amazing. There is a whole person in there getting ready to join the world. Our son or daughter, Natalie said, testing out the word. Ours. Ours, Thomas agreed firmly. He kissed her forehead. Thank you for trusting me with this, with all of it. Thank you for giving me a reason to trust again. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other. And for the first time since discovering she was pregnant, Natalie felt completely safe. The months that followed were some of the happiest of Natalie's life, despite the increasing discomforts of late pregnancy. As her belly grew larger, Thomas became even more attentive, taking over the heavier chores and insisting she rest often. He built a cradle for the baby in his workshop, crafting it carefully from smooth pine and decorating it with simple carved designs. Natalie lined it with quilts and the little clothes she had made. In late November, the first real snow came, blanketing the ranch in white. Natalie stood at the window, watching fat flakes fall from a gray sky, and felt the baby shift and roll inside her. The due date was approaching, and she felt a mix of anticipation and fear. She had heard stories about childbirth, knew it was dangerous, knew women died bringing children into the world. But she also knew Thomas would be there, and somehow that made all the difference. What are you thinking about? Thomas asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her as much as her belly would allow. The baby. Wondering what it will be like, hoping I will be a good mother. You will be wonderful. You already love this child. I can see it in everything you do. I do love it. So much it frightens me sometimes. What if something goes wrong? What if I cannot protect it? Thomas turned her gently to face him. Then we will face it together. You are not alone anymore, Natalie. Whatever comes, we handle it as a family. His certainty helped settle her anxiety. She leaned into his embrace, grateful beyond words for this man who had chosen her, who had claimed her child as his own, who loved her with a steady, dependable devotion that grew deeper every day. On the 15th of December, 1878, Natalie woke in the early morning hours with pain radiating across her lower back. At first, she tried to ignore it, thinking it was just another discomfort of late pregnancy. But as the pain came again, then again in a regular rhythm, she knew. The baby was coming. Thomas, she said, shaking his shoulder gently. Thomas, wake up, it is time. He was alert immediately, sitting up and reaching for his pants. Are you sure? How far apart are the pains? I do not know, maybe 10 minutes, maybe less. I will ride for the doctor and Molly. You stay here, try to relax. I will be as fast as I can. He was dressed in minutes and out the door, and Natalie heard the sound of hoofbeats fading into the snowy pre-dawn. She got up and moved around the house, instinctively pacing as another contraction gripped her. The pain was manageable still, but she knew it would get worse. She had heard enough stories to know what was coming. Thomas returned within an hour with both Dr. Morrison, a gruff but competent man who had settled in Opal 2 years earlier, and Molly Garvey, who immediately took charge of the situation with calm efficiency. "You men, out," Molly ordered. "Thomas, go boil water and gather clean towels. Doctor, you can examine her first, but then you wait in the other room until we need you. Women's business is best left to women until something goes wrong." Dr. Morrison examined Natalie briefly, pronounced everything proceeding normally, and retreated to the main room where Thomas was pacing like a caged animal. Molly stayed with Natalie, helping her through contractions, encouraging her to walk when she could and rest when she needed. The labor went on for hours. Morning turned to afternoon and the pains grew stronger, closer together. Natalie tried to be brave, to not cry out, but eventually the pain was too much, and she found herself gripping Molly's hand and screaming through the worst contractions. "That is it, let it out," Molly encouraged. "No point being quiet about it. Scream if you need to." In the other room, Thomas heard every sound and felt helpless. He wanted to be in there with her, wanted to hold her hand and tell her she was strong, but Molly had been firm about him staying out. So he paced and prayed and listened to his wife in pain, and hated that he could not do anything to help. Finally, as the winter sun was setting, Molly called out, "Doctor, we need you. Baby is coming now, doctor." Morrison hurried into the bedroom and Thomas tried to follow, but Molly blocked the door. "Not yet. Let the doctor work. You can come in soon." It was the longest few minutes of Thomas's life. He heard Natalie cry out one more time, heard Molly giving instructions, heard the doctor say something he could not make out, and then, cutting through everything, the thin, angry wail of a newborn baby. Thomas felt his knees go weak with relief. The baby was here. The baby was crying. That was good. Crying meant breathing, meant alive. "Thomas," Molly called, "come meet your son." He stumbled into the room, his eyes going first to Natalie, who looked exhausted but was smiling through tears. Then to the bundle in Molly's arms, a red-faced, furious little creature with dark hair and tiny fists waving in the air. "A son," Thomas said, wonder in his voice. "We have a son." Molly placed the baby carefully in his arms, and Thomas looked down at the child who had just entered the world. The child who was not his by blood but was his in every way that mattered. The baby's eyes, dark and unfocused, seemed to look right at him, and Thomas felt his heart expand in a way he had not known was possible. "Hello," he whispered. "Hello, little one. I am your papa and I am so happy to meet you." "Is he all right?" Natalie asked weakly. "Is he healthy?" "He is perfect," Dr. Morrison said. "All fingers and toes, good strong lungs, a fine healthy boy." "Well done, Mrs. Porter." Thomas carried the baby to Natalie, settling him carefully in her arms. She looked down at her son with an expression of such pure love that Thomas felt his own eyes sting. "He is beautiful," Natalie said. "He is perfect." "What should we name him?" Thomas asked. They had discussed names but never settled on one. Now, looking at the baby, Natalie said, "What about James, James Porter?" "James," Thomas repeated. "I like that. James Porter. Welcome to the family, James." Dr. Morrison finished his examination of both mother and baby, pronounced them both healthy, and gave instructions for the next few days. Molly stayed long enough to help Natalie get cleaned up and settled comfortably with the baby. Then she and the doctor left, promising to check back in a few days. Finally, Thomas and Natalie were alone with their son. Thomas sat carefully on the edge of the bed, one arm around Natalie, both of them staring at the baby in wonder. "I was so scared," Natalie admitted. "Scared something would go wrong, scared I would not be able to do it. But you did. You were so brave. I heard you in here fighting, and I was so proud of you. You were listening, could not help it. I wanted to be in here with you, but Molly said no." Natalie leaned her head on his shoulder. "I am glad you are here now. I need you to hold me and tell me we can do this. That we can be good parents to this little person." "We can do this," Thomas said firmly. "We will learn together and we will make mistakes, but we will love him fiercely and protect him with everything we have. That is what parents do." Little James made a small sound and Natalie adjusted him, trying to figure out how to feed him. It took a few attempts, but eventually the baby latched on and began to nurse. Natalie laughed with relief. "I was worried he would not know what to do." "Instinct is a powerful thing," Thomas said. He stroked the baby's soft, dark hair gently. "He has your hair. And his father's eyes, I think. They might change, but they are brown right now." Thomas noticed she said father, not Charles's name. The man who had abandoned her was already being erased, replaced by the family they were building together. As it should be. That night, after James had finally fallen asleep in his new cradle, Thomas and Natalie lay in bed holding hands, too wired to sleep despite their exhaustion. "This is the best day of my life," Thomas said quietly. "The day I became a father, the day our family really began." "Mine too," Natalie said. "Even with the pain, even with being terrified, this is the happiest I have ever been." They fell asleep eventually, and when James woke crying a few hours later, Thomas was the one who got up, carefully lifting the baby and bringing him to Natalie to nurse. He learned quickly how to change the tiny nappies, how to support the fragile head, how to soothe the baby when he fussed. Fatherhood came naturally to Thomas, and watching him with their son made Natalie fall even more deeply in love with him. The winter passed in a blur of sleepless nights and baby care. James grew and changed, becoming more alert, beginning to focus on faces, to smile when he heard their voices. Thomas would come in from his chores and immediately wash up, so he could hold his son, talking to the baby about the ranch, and the animals, and all the things they would do together when James was older. One evening in March, with James asleep in his cradle and a fire crackling in the hearth, Natalie and Thomas sat together on the sofa Thomas had recently bought from a catalog. She was curled against his side, his arm around her shoulders. "I never thanked you properly," Natalie said. "For what?" "For claiming James as yours. For never once treating him as less than your own son. For giving both of us a real family." Thomas shifted so he could look at her face. "Natalie, James is my son. I know I did not father him, but I am his father. That is not a favor to you. That is the truth. From the moment you told me you were pregnant, I made a choice. From the moment he was born and I held him, that was my son, my child. Do you understand?" "Yes," Natalie whispered. "And Thomas, I need to tell you something." "What?" "I love you." "I have been wanting to say it for weeks, but I was not sure if you felt the same, and I did not want to push you into saying something you did not mean. But I love you. Truly, deeply love you. You are the best man I have ever known, and I am so grateful that I got on that train to Montana." Thomas's face broke into a wide smile. He cupped her face in both hands and kissed her thoroughly. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright. "I love you too, Natalie. I have loved you since about the third day you were here when you told that joke about the chickens and laughed so hard you snorted. I have been wanting to tell you, but I wanted you to have time to heal from everything you went through. I did not want you to feel pressured." "I do not feel pressured. I feel loved. For the first time in my life, I feel truly loved." They kissed again, and it felt like another beginning, another promise made and sealed. The years that followed were good ones. The ranch prospered under Thomas's hard work and careful management. They added more cattle, some sheep, improved the house with an addition that gave them a proper dining room and another bedroom. When James was 2, Natalie became pregnant again, and this time there was no fear, only joy. She gave birth to a daughter they named Lucy, and Thomas loved her with the same fierce devotion he showed to James. 2 years after Lucy came another son, William, who had Thomas's smile and Natalie's determination. The house that had once seemed too quiet was now filled with noise and laughter and the chaos of children. Thomas proved to be a wonderful father, patient and kind but firm when needed. He taught James to ride and rope, to care for animals, to work hard but also to value learning and education. He read stories to Lucy and bounced William on his knee while Natalie cooked dinner one day. When James was 7 years old, he came to Thomas with a question that had clearly been weighing on his mind. "Papa, why do I not look like you?" They were in the barn, and Thomas stopped mucking the stall to give his full attention to the question. "What do you mean? Lucy and William have your color eyes and your smile, but I have brown eyes like Mama, and I do not look like you. Peter Garvey said maybe you are not my real papa." Thomas set down the pitchfork and knelt so he was at eye level with James. "James, look at me. I am your real papa. I have been your papa since before you were born. I chose to be your papa, and that makes me just as real as if you had my eyes or my smile. Family is not just about how you look. It is about who loves you and takes care of you and would do anything for you. Do you understand?" "I guess so. But why do I not have your eyes?" Thomas took a deep breath. He and Natalie had discussed this conversation, knowing it would come eventually. They had agreed on honesty, appropriate for the age. "Because another man helped make you before you were born, but that man left your mama alone and scared. When I met your mama, she was carrying you, and I decided right then that I wanted to be your papa. I wanted to love you and protect you and raise you, and I have. You are my son, James, never doubt that." James thought about this seriously. "Did the other man not want me? The other man never knew you, never gave himself a chance to want you. That was his loss and my great fortune. I got to be your papa, and you are one of the best things that ever happened to me. Do you love me the same as Lucy and William?" "Exactly the same. No difference at all. You are all my children, and I love all of you more than anything in this world." James processed this, then nodded. "Okay. I am going to tell Peter Garvey that you are my real papa and he does not know what he is talking about." Thomas smiled. "You do that. And James, if you ever have more questions about this, you come talk to me or your mama. We will always tell you the truth." "Okay, Papa." James ran off to continue whatever game he had been playing before the question came up, and Thomas stood, feeling the weight of the conversation but also the rightness of it. James deserved to know the truth, and he would always know he was loved and wanted. That evening, after the children were in bed, Thomas told Natalie about the conversation. She had been worried about how to handle it when the time came, and she was relieved that it had gone well. "He accepted it so easily," she said. "I thought he might be upset or confused. Children are resilient, and he has never had reason to doubt that I love him. That makes all the difference." Natalie moved into his arms, and he held her close, as he had done countless times over the years. They stood together in the kitchen they had built together, in the house they had made a home, and reflected on the life they had created. "Do you ever regret it?" Natalie asked. "Taking on someone else's child, marrying a pregnant woman you barely knew?" "Never. Not once. You and James and Lucy and William, this ranch, this life. It is everything I wanted and more than I dreamed I could have. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Natalie Porter. You are the best thing that ever happened to me too. You saved me, Thomas. You saved both of us." "We saved each other," Thomas corrected. "I was lonely and directionless before you came. You gave me purpose, gave me a family to work for and come home to. That is not saving. That is partnership." They kissed, a kiss full of years of affection and shared history and deep, abiding love. As the years continued to pass, the ranch grew into one of the most successful in the area. Thomas's reputation for fairness and hard work earned him respect throughout the territory. And when Montana achieved statehood in 1889, he was asked to serve on the local council. Natalie continued to manage their home and raise their children, but she also used her sewing skills to make clothing for other families, enjoying the creative work and the extra income. James grew into a fine young man, tall and strong and good-hearted like his father. He never again questioned Thomas's place in his life, and he introduced Thomas to everyone as his papa with pride. When James turned 18, Thomas gave him a section of the ranch to manage himself, teaching him the business side of ranching and preparing him to eventually take over. Lucy became a teacher, opening a small school in Opal and instructing the children of the growing town. She had inherited her mother's intelligence and her father's patience, and she was beloved by her students. William decided to study law, an unusual choice for a ranch family, but Thomas and Natalie supported him fully, helping him get the education he needed and celebrating when he passed the bar exam and opened a practice in the nearby city of Helena. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Thomas and Natalie sat on the porch of their expanded house, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. Their children were grown now, building their own lives, though they all stayed close and visited often. James had married a sweet girl from a neighboring ranch and was building a house on his section of the property. Lucy boarded with a family in town during the school year, but came home every weekend. William visited when his law practice allowed. 20 years, Natalie said, reaching for Thomas's hand. "Can you believe it has been 20 years? "Best 20 years of my life," Thomas said, squeezing her fingers gently. "You remember that first day, when I stepped off the train terrified that you would send me away. I remember thinking you were the bravest person I had ever met, coming all that way, facing uncertainty, protecting your child. I knew right then that I wanted you to stay. Even with the baby, especially with the baby. James gave me an instant purpose. He needed a father, and I needed to be needed. It was perfect." Natalie leaned her head on his shoulder. "I never thought I would be this happy. After everything that happened in Boston, I thought my life was over, but it was just beginning." "Our life was just beginning," Thomas corrected. "This is ours, Natalie. Everything we built, everything we created, we did it together." They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, watching the day fade into night. Behind them, the house glowed with lamplight, warm and welcoming. The barn and outbuildings stood solid and well-maintained. The land stretched out in all directions, productive and beautiful. And throughout it all, the memories of 20 years of love and laughter, of struggles overcome, a family built from courage and choice. "Thank you," Natalie said softly, "for choosing us, for loving us, for being the kind of man who would claim another man's child and make him your own. Thank you for trusting me with your heart and your son. Thank you for making this house a home. Thank you for 20 years of partnership and love and joy. Thank you for being mine." The stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, the same stars that had watched them meet and marry and build their life together. Tomorrow would bring more work, more challenges, more of the daily rhythms that define their existence. But tonight, in this moment, Thomas and Natalie simply sat together, grateful for the journey that had brought them here and for all the years still to come. Inside the house, a clock chimed the hour. From somewhere in the distance, a coyote called to the moon. The air smelled of pine and grass and the particular scent of a Montana evening in summer. Life was good. Life was rich and full and exactly what it should be. Years later, when Thomas and Natalie were old and gray, they would tell their grandchildren the story of how they met. How a scared young woman had stepped off a train carrying another man's child, and how a lonely cowboy had looked at her and seen not a problem but a possibility. How they had built a family from nothing but courage and determination and love. How they had created a legacy that would last for generations. And their grandchildren, sitting at their feet in the house that Thomas built, would listen with wide eyes and believe in the power of second chances and the strength of chosen family. They would grow up knowing that love was not just about blood, but about commitment and choice, and showing up every single day to protect and nurture those you claimed as your own. James Porter would eventually take over the ranch, running it with the same integrity and dedication his father had shown. He would tell his own children that his papa was the best man he had ever known, that being chosen was sometimes better than being born into a family, because it meant you were wanted beyond question. And he would pass down the values Thomas had instilled in him, ensuring that the Porter name stood for something good in Montana for decades to come. But that was all in the future. For now, on that 20th anniversary evening, Thomas and Natalie simply sat together on their porch. Two people who had found each other when they both needed finding, who had built something beautiful from uncertain beginnings, who had proven that love could be chosen just as powerfully as it could be born. As darkness fully settled over the ranch, Thomas stood and helped Natalie to her feet. "Come on, Mrs. Porter, let us go inside. I have a surprise for you." "What kind of surprise? If I told you, it would not be a surprise." She laughed and let him lead her into the house, into the warmth and light, into the home they had made together. And somewhere in the stars above, if such things could be witnessed, the universe smiled on the mail-order bride and the cowboy who had both been brave enough to take a chance on love. The surprise Thomas had prepared was simple but meaningful. He had commissioned a portrait artist passing through the territory to paint a family picture from photographs they had collected over the years. The painting showed Thomas and Natalie surrounded by their 3 children, all of them healthy and happy and whole. It was beautifully done, capturing not just their faces but the love that connected them. "It is perfect," Natalie said, tears streaming down her face. "This is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." "I wanted you to have something that showed what we built together," Thomas said. "Our family, our life, everything that matters most." They hung the painting in the main room where they could see it every day, a reminder of all they had accomplished and all they meant to each other. As the years advanced, Thomas and Natalie aged gracefully together, their love deepening with time rather than fading. They celebrated each milestone together, supported each other through losses and challenges, and remained each other's best friend and greatest love until the very end. When Thomas was 72 years old, he died peacefully in his sleep with Natalie holding his hand. His last words were, "I love you. Thank you for saying yes all those years ago." Natalie mourned him deeply, but also celebrated a life well lived and a love that had transformed both of them. She lived another 5 years, spending her time with her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, telling stories and passing down wisdom. When she joined Thomas in the small cemetery outside Opal, the entire town came to her funeral, testimony to the woman she had been, and the family she had built. On her gravestone, beneath her name and dates, James had inscribed, "Beloved wife, mother, and grandmother." She came to Montana seeking refuge and found home. Her courage changed the course of many lives. And next to her, Thomas's gravestone read, Beloved husband, father, and grandfather, he saw past circumstance to possibility and built a legacy of love, a good man who kept his promises. Together, even in death, they remained side by side, their story complete, their love eternal, their impact lasting through generations. The ranch continued through James's line, each generation adding their own chapter to the story while honoring the foundation that Thomas and Natalie had laid. The house was preserved and maintained, becoming a historical landmark that told the story of how one woman's desperate journey and one man's generous heart had created something that endured. And on quiet evenings, when the wind whispered through the Montana pines and the sun set behind the mountains in blazing glory, you could almost feel their presence still. The mail-order bride who had been brave enough to step off that train despite her fear. The cowboy who had been compassionate enough to see her value and claim her child as his own. Two souls who had found each other in the vastness of the West and built a love that became legendary. Their story was told and retold, a testament to the power of second chances, to the strength found in choosing family rather than just accepting what biology provided, and to the enduring truth that love, real love, was about commitment and courage and showing up every single day to honor the promises you made. In the end, that was what Thomas and Natalie had given each other and their children and everyone who knew them. A model of what love could be when it was built on honesty and respect and unwavering devotion. A reminder that circumstances of birth mattered far less than the choices made every day to love and protect and cherish those entrusted to your care. The little boy who had been carried into Montana in his mother's womb, unnamed and fatherless, had grown into a man of honor and integrity because a cowboy had looked at him on the day he was born and said without hesitation, "This child is mine now too." And in that moment of claiming, a family had been forged that would last for generations. That was the legacy of Thomas and Natalie Porter, not the land they accumulated or the money they earned, though both were considerable by the end. Their true legacy was the family they built from courage and compassion, the love that sustained them through 50 years of marriage, and the example they set for how to live with integrity and honor and devotion to those you choose to love. And if love stories were measured not in grand gestures but in quiet moments of daily choosing, in patient years of building together, in the legacy left behind when the story ends, then theirs was the greatest love story ever told in Montana territory. The sun set that final time on their story, painting the sky in the same colors it had shown the evening they first sat together as an engaged couple, planning their future. The stars emerged one by one, witnessing the completion of a tale that had begun with fear and uncertainty and ended with fulfillment and peace. And somewhere in the great beyond, two souls reunited, Thomas and Natalie together again, their love unbroken by death, their story complete, their purpose fulfilled, and their happiness eternal.